You all to the City of Palmdale and what is the 8th in a series of 9 meetings that we are doing across the Palmdale to Burbank section on the California High-Speed Rail program. I would like to welcome all of you here tonight to the meeting where we would provide an update to you on the specific plans that are being proposed currently for this project. I would also like to welcome our online audience. We have folks viewing us from across the state and in fact, from wherever they are. So we welcome you and thank you for your participation tonight. I encourage you as well to provide your comments to the authority. You have the email address. They are welcome anytime. For those of you here in the audience, we welcome your comments anytime. We are in a preliminary planning phase, and it is an opportunity for the team prior to specific decisions being made for them to learn and understand what each of our community areas are thinking prior to those decisions occurring. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the City of Palmdale, specifically Mayor Ledford. Thank you for welcoming us here today, and has always been the case over time. So we very much appreciate the hospitality and the participation from all of our community areas, particularly the City of Palmdale. My name is Genoveva Arellano. I am the Outreach Manager for the Palmdale to Burbank section. And again, we welcome you here tonight. We have a presentation to review overall information about the California High-Speed Rail program and specifically about the Palmdale to Burbank section. This is the 8th in a series of 9 meetings, and our intent right now is to provide all our communities with an update on the planning process for the project. All of the information that you see here tonight, as well online, is available through the authority's website, so you can review that anytime going forward. It has been available to our communities, and we like making that information available for you to share and also continue to monitor where we are with the project. What I'd like to do now is ask our mayor to come forward. I understand you'll do the honors of introducing our regional director, if you would, and we would proceed with the presentation and be happy to entertain questions at our stations following the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Good job, and thank you. Welcome, everybody. That's my job. Thank you. Now, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about our need to be involved with an opinion. This isn't about agreement. This is about your opinion. And how do we draw that out? I think it's these open houses are doing exactly that. This is 8 out of 9 meetings. I think there's a lot of input that's been received, and that's the point. As we move forward, we'll be looking to try to develop consensus and try to find areas of commonality that will allow this project to move forward. In my mind, that's my goal. It may not be your goal, but that's okay. We're going to work together. We're going to figure it out. I can tell you today I made a presentation to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I went to their luncheon and we talked about transportation just in Palmdale and what this project would mean to our transportation network here in Palmdale. And I talked about all the other elements like airport and some light rail and yada, 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 yada. That's our plan. That's our vision. That's not necessarily the entire route for this high-speed rail. So your communities, wherever you may come from, hey, you have an opinion. And certainly I respect that. But this is the time to express so we can get our arms around this thing and hopefully come to a consensus. So that's part of my welcome. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my fellow colleague, Fred Thompson, who's here as councilman from the City of Palmdale, is here. Thank you. I also have with us Marco Enriquez is here. He's planning commissioner. He has an interest. Thank you. Rich Poston, who serves on my NCTC, that's the North County Transportation Coalition. We've been working on transportation, regional transportation issues for close to 20 years now, but he is my rep on that board. And I have one other elected official, and that's Kathy McLaren from the Palmdale Water District. She's here. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to get up and address the group. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Michelle Bowen. She's going to come up and give us a presentation on high-speed rail.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, and all of the elected officials here, elected official representatives, and of course our public. And hello to all of you that are viewing this meeting on the web. We appreciate you, and we appreciate every single person here, every single person who has come to one of our previous meetings. As we embark upon the process basically to build an 800-mile railroad for the state of California, that's no small undertaking, certainly. And your comments, your feedback, your participation in this activity really help us to be able to do the best possible job that we can do to bring this project to fruition. And we're going to talk a little bit about that process. We're going to talk about the things that we have to balance as we move through the planning, ultimately to the environmental clearance, the design, and the construction operation of this high-speed, all-electric railroad that we've embarked upon building for California. So I need and hope that you all recognize your contribution to this particular process, and we very much thank you for taking your time to help us do a great job as we build this project. And so on the slide right now, you can see our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about high-speed rail, the program in general, just to make sure that everybody has a basic working knowledge of what we're up to. We're going to walk you through time and show you basically the ideas that we've had for this particular route over the course of the past several years, so you can see how it's evolved based on the input of the public, regulatory agencies, and our ability to gain more technical data. We're going to show you exactly where we're at today and talk about those steps that we're going to be going through, and I'll turn it back over to Genevieve at that point so she can tell you a little bit more about the community engagement process. So, high-speed rail. The state of California, of course, is a thriving economy in and of itself. Of course, we're part of the overall economy of the United States, but by ourselves, we are the 7th largest economy in the world. And we want to make sure that stays the case. And I'm actually pleased to announce that over the course of the past several months that we've been using this slide, we've actually been able to change that number. We were number 8. And now we're number 7. And apparently in the past several months, we've been able to pass Russia. So that's no small feat. We want to make sure, though, as policy people at the state level and at the city level and at the, at every level, that we're planning to keep our economy as strong as possible. And one of the cornerstones of a strong economy is commerce. It's our ability to move people and goods effectively and efficiently around the state, to deliver things on time, to get people places on time. That is a core tenet, basically, of our economic success. And so that's really the discussion that we're having in the state of California right now, is how do we make sure that we plan for what's going to be happening in the future and make sure that our transportation system, for our goods as well as our people, thrives into the future. And here are some of the things that we know that we face today. We know that we have a lot of congestion. And one of the things that we've been talking about lately is, sort of how common it is that we talk, that we joke about how much traffic we have on our roadways and freeways. So much so that traffic has become a character in our movies, in our literature about Southern California. And so that's something that we all acknowledge, but something we don't often recognize is we have an equal amount of traffic and congestion in our airways. Our short-haul air market from Southern California to Northern California is the busiest in the country, and our on-time performance for those planes is not stellar right now and could use some help. We also, and importantly, have a lot of congestion on our steel rail right now. Our railroads in Southern California, in most places, actually share, and they provide a service basically to our goods movement, our freight rail, and our passenger rail all use the same set of tracks in Southern California. And that's creating a lot of congestion. That means that our passenger trains aren't arriving places on time, and that means our goods are not arriving places on time. And so we want to make sure that we're able to address this congestion problem moving forward. And so that's where the state of California basically took a look at the situation, and they recognized that there is a need to be planning for the long-term future. Because if things aren't great right now, with the projected population growth for the state of California, we're at 38 million right now. We're going to be at 50 million over the course of the next several decades. We need to make sure that we're coming up with the plan to address that population growth and make sure we maintain an effective transportation system in the future. And so that's really where high-speed rail comes into the mix. High-speed rail is one piece of an overall statewide rail modernization program for the state of California that is focused on investing in all of our rail infrastructure. It's focused on investments, and investments have been made by the High-Speed Rail Authority in, for instance, purchase of new locomotives for Metrolink, double track projects for our existing rail so that we could run more Metrolink service, connecting projects for light rail down the hill a little ways, grade separation so that we can make our existing services safer, and very importantly, positive train control for our existing passenger rail service right now. Our Metrolink system will be the first railroad in the country to complete their positive train control project. And for those of you that watch the news and follow rail, you know that that is a critically needed safety advancement. That is the system that allows all the trains to know how fast they should be going at any given time and where all the other trains are, so that they are never going over the speed limit and they are never getting into contact with another train. That is a very, very important piece of safety upgrade for our local passenger system. So all of those things are part of the world that high-speed rail will be entering. And high-speed rail, here's our map, basically is a brand new 800-mile all-electric railroad for the state of California. It is planned to operate at over 200 miles per hour, and we are putting stations in the heart of our major cities and metropolitan areas so that we're attracting people back to the center instead of having them run to the outskirts of the city. And it's meant to provide a choice to the traveling public. It is meant to come in and complement all of the existing rail service that we have, all of our existing transportation uses. We will connect it to all of our existing transportation systems, and that's why it's been so critical when we've selected where our stations will be, like in the Palmdale area, where we have connectivity to the existing Metrolink station, and we have future connectivity to plans to build a high-speed rail system to Las Vegas. That is critical here. In the San Fernando Valley, it was critical that we took a look at the Burbank airport location so we would have air rail connectivity, as well as connectivity to 2 different Metrolink systems, as well as our Amtrak passenger rail system that takes travelers from San Luis Obispo all the way down to San Diego. So that's what we're looking at when we're building high-speed rail, is we're bringing it to California and connecting it and making it part of an overall transportation system so that people will have a choice in the future in terms of how they make a trip across the state. And so you can see here basically that in the navy blue is our phase 1 system. That it goes from San Francisco all the way down to Anaheim. That's about 500 miles. This is the piece of the system that the Palmdale to Burbank section is on, that we're going to talk about later today and that we're here to talk about. And so we have construction underway on this. We have construction started in the Fresno area on the first 30 miles. We're getting off the ground the next 65 miles right now, and we have out to bid the next 30 or so miles, taking us all the way into the outskirts of Bakersfield. And that's really where the Southern California office picks up. That's the office that I oversee. And so we're basically doing all of the planning to take the train from Bakersfield all the way down to Anaheim, and then also on the phase 2 section that you can see in the yellow there in the southern area from Los Angeles down to San Diego. That's our phase 2 piece. It's about 167 miles, and you can also see the phase 2 piece up in Sacramento. And I did mention the planning that other agencies are doing right now to bring high-speed service basically from Las Vegas all the way into the Palmdale area. And so we are actively coordinating with those activities to make sure that when we make an investment in these pieces of infrastructure, that they're forward-looking and that they accommodate all of the plans coming up for the future, so we have the best possible connectivity, so that someday you can get on a train here in Palmdale, you can go to Las Vegas, you can go to Anaheim, you can go to San Diego, you could go to Sacramento, you can go to San Francisco. Literally, the Southwest region is at your fingertips with very fast, convenient travel. So I like to spend a little bit of time talking about this overall approach to this program, because there are a lot of complex issues, as you might imagine, when you're building an 800-mile railroad that you need to look at, that we need to look at, and we need to balance in order to ultimately be able to build the best possible project. And so here essentially are those big things that we need to fully understand and bring together in order to ultimately select the route for the Palmdale to Burbank section. And the number one here is the project objectives. So in the yellow circle, the project objectives, those are the things that we need to make sure we can do as engineers, owners, and operators to make sure that we're building a safe train. It has got to be safe. That we're building a fast train. It has got to be fast. That is our commitment. That we're putting stations in areas where we can draw the most riders to the system, because we want to make sure that we're building a system, right, that people ride and can take. And so that's what goes into that project objective circle. If you move over to the green circle, the environmental resources, those are the things that we need to do to protect our natural resources, right? We need to protect our mountains and our water and our trees and our animals. All of those things are very, very critical, and we need to make sure that when we're building a high-speed rail system, we protect those things. Finally, up at the top, we have our communities, and those are critically important because we need to make sure that we're protecting our communities just like we protect our natural resources. We need to understand the character of the communities, the places in the communities that have historic significance, that are gathering places, that are important, and we need to make sure that as we're building and designing the project, we are respectful of that and the community character, the things that are important, right? Are you independent? Are you off the grid? Or are you very much on the grid as a community? We have very, very different communities, as you might imagine, when you go from Palmdale all the way down to the San Fernando Valley. And so we need to understand all of that in order to be able to work with those communities to move this project forward to ultimately get to the best answers. And so the best project basically is that project that balances those three areas, right, to come up with that one best route to connect the Palmdale station to the Burbank station. So I'll move on here so that I can talk to you a little bit about essentially how that works in fact, in process, as we're moving. That balancing act is right up here on these maps. As you can see, as you move from 2010 to 2012 to 2014, twice to 2015, you can see that the alignments have changed over time. They have evolved. And the reason that they have evolved is very much because of that balancing act. As we learn more technical details, we understand more about the rocks, right, and how strong they are, or more about the types of plants in a certain area. As we learn more about the communities and the community character that we talked about, as we learn more about the types of technology that we can bring to bear to build the train, we evolve the design. And so you can see that in 2010, basically, we had, this particular configuration for the alignment. You can see in 2012 that there were some significant changes to that. You can see in early 2014, again, there were additional changes, again, additional refinements and evolution. In 2014, towards the end of the year, we were showing those particular routes. And now in 2015, all of the information we're presenting today, we're presenting these route concepts right here. And those are the product, basically, of the evolving process to ultimately develop the single selected route to connect these two stations. And here is a bigger map basically showing our 2015, the routes that we're talking about tonight. And you can see here the routes that are in bright colors are those 2015 alignments. The routes that are in gray were the routes that were shown at the end of 2014. And so I'll just click a button right here. And you can see basically those 2014 routes have now been refined. These are the 2015 routes that we are taking a look at. And you can see that we basically have a range of 4 options as you come into the Burbank Airport, and we have several options as you leave the Palmdale station location as well. So these will continue to be the lines and routes that we study through the environmental process. And this is that environmental process here, and those of you who have joined us for previous meetings have seen this particular flow chart. What is important to note basically is all of the activities that we've undertaken to date. These are the activities on the top line of this flow chart. So basically, we're still in the beginning of this process in terms of defining essentially the routes that we will study through the environmental clearance process. We have identified that range of alternatives. That range of alternatives are the alternatives that we are showing here tonight, that we will continue to move forward. And so we're here. And I have another slide that'll talk a little bit more specifically about some of the stuff that we've done in the last 12 months. But I want to be clear that now we're going to enter that production of those technical studies, doing those deep dives to produce a draft environmental document, and then we will have public hearings associated with it and go into the production of a final environmental document. And we have a schedule for you at the end of the presentation. So here, basically, is kind of a blow up of what we've been doing over the course of the last several months. Last summer, we had a series of scoping meetings to announce basically that we would be studying this as a Palmdale to Burbank project, that would be the limits of the environmental document. And we also talked about a lot of ideas of different things that we could study. We then went back and developed a range of alternatives, and those alternatives are those late 2014 alternatives that we showed on the previous slide. And we went out and we got a lot of feedback. We got feedback from agencies, we got feedback from the public, we got feedback from all types of engineers that are involved in our project. And we went back and we refined those alternatives. Basically, we needed to update those. We took those out. We had a bunch of focus groups, very smaller community working groups where we had a very free flow of information, and we were able to further develop basically those routes through that process to where we are today. basically showing you those routes that we have identified for this point in time to take forward through the environmental process. And here on this slide, you get a little bit of a sense for the types of information, the types of studies we've done to develop the alternatives that we're showing you tonight. That's here in the light blue. So that's a higher level of review of many, many things in order to narrow down and come up with the things that we think present the best ideas that are out there to offer. And now we're going to go and we are going to study all of those routes in all of these areas. A technical study will be produced in each of these areas that analyzes each of the routes. And that study will come to certain conclusions about each of the routes. And those conclusions then will be collected, and we'll take a look at them in the process to ultimately figure out which route performs the best in all of these different areas. And this is very, very thorough. Obviously, we're studying traffic, we're studying environmental justice, we're studying noise, we're studying land use and development, we're studying water and water resources, we're studying seismicity and earthquakes, right? Biology and wetlands, air quality. These are deep technical studies that analyze each of the routes and come to a conclusion about how a particular route perform. And that's the work that we need to do in order to ultimately get to the point where we can select which of the routes are the best single route to make that connection between the two stations. And so I'm going to have Genevieve now come out and talk to you a little bit about that outreach process to date.
Thank you, Michelle. As you can see, it's quite a process for us to evolve ideas and bring them down to the level of specific alternatives and have that information go through an iterative process with our community areas, our environmental agencies, and the team itself to arrive to the point where we are today. Our outreach program has been quite proactive over time. We very much rely on our community areas to keep us informed about preferences locally. And as a result, we've been able to bring forward alternatives that reflect that community-based planning that the authority is very committed to. Over the last year, a series of open house meetings have been held each time our map changes. So a year ago, here in this room, we presented where we were at that point. In December, once again, we came out to do the same information as the maps have changed. And here we are today with 9 meetings repeated over all of our community areas to give you that update. As Michelle mentioned, in August of last summer, public scoping meetings were also held to provide the latest announcement to our environmental agencies and to the community about what specifically was going to be studied between Palmdale and Burbank. In addition, the authority has held small group meetings, which we call community working group meetings, in each one of our community areas to focus in on local issues. So here in Palmdale, we've gotten quite a bit of information about what is preferred locally, and each one of our community areas have actually been quite effective at working with us on local issues. And the authority has a pretty good sense about what people are saying in each area, and that has really helped to shape the alternatives and preferences as you see today. I want to just emphasize that this process is evolving and the authority continues to move forward with the technical process with a simultaneous public outreach process to move the entire program forward. Going forward, as we move into this next phase of the detailed environmental document, which is a legally required document that complies with both federal and state law, it is a process that is quite detailed, as Michelle mentioned, into each of those areas. And as that is being done, we will still engage with our communities to keep you apprised of what we are learning about each of the alternatives that are being proposed as you see them in conceptual form today. In addition, we would like to hold more specific meetings with each one of our community areas on some of these topics, specifically the station area development here in Palmdale and in Burbank. We want to talk more specifically about what that could look like. Our sustainability priorities are very important in each one of our local areas. How could we reflect that in our planning? And then more specifically, some of the aesthetics that a lot of people ask us about. What is it going to look like? How can we make our community local imprint on the program as it's moving forward? So we look forward to having these discussions with each one of our community areas during this next phase of the program. What this program is really about is the future and anticipating a major need of the state and this region to move people and to access jobs, to access educational opportunities, and to keep our economy thriving. It's a big concept, it's a big program. It exists for quite a number of decades across the world in other countries, and it doesn't exist here yet in the United States. So California is the leader once again in a major transformational program that really will help shape the state moving forward. As Michelle mentioned, our population growth alone demands that we think more critically about how we move people around. But there are also opportunities to be more sustainable with our planning, to think toward the future with innovation and technology. And this program is consistent with some of those bigger ideals and how we can accomplish some of these things and move forward with multiple goals at the same time. So to be specific where we are going, we want to wrap up by letting you know some of our specific next steps. So we are concluding our open house meeting series this week. And next week, the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board of Directors will be having its monthly meeting here in the Los Angeles, Southern California area, downtown Los Angeles, on Tuesday, June 9th. And that meeting will be held at the Ronald Reagan State Building in downtown Los Angeles, beginning at 10 o'clock if you're interested in attending. There is a public comment period at all of the board meetings, and we really invite our stakeholders to come forward to speak directly to the Board of Directors about any thoughts or opinions that you have. So that will occur, and this essentially the same information that's being presented to all of our communities will then be in a report format to the Board of Directors. They will receive that and then move forward as an information item, and the team will move forward with continuing the technical studies as we described. During that process, or rather after the board meeting, the team will then move into the more specific project level environmental documents that we talked about. We'll have ongoing community engagement as I described. So to give yourself a general timeline, by a year from now, summer generally of 2016 is when the draft environmental document would be produced. This would be a compilation of all the technical studies that we discussed across all of the alternatives that are being evaluated. It will be a public document, and we will hold public hearings so that people can testify specifically about any concerns that you may have or opinions on the project. Each one of those comments will be recorded for the record and responded to by the authority point by point. And that takes about a year in this case. Summer of 2017, the final environmental document would be produced, and it's after that point that the team would be able to make a recommendation back to its Board of Directors about a preferred alternative, and the board would be asked to approve and adopt an alignment at that point. So we're a couple of years away from a decision point. We want to encourage you to stay involved with this collaborative planning process. We experience quite a bit of feedback from all of our community areas. As Michelle mentioned, we have a diverse, very rich set of communities and objectives that we're trying to accomplish as we're doing this planning. Keeping that balancing act in terms of moving forward with what the objectives are of the high-speed rail, making sure we comply with all of the environmental law and regulation with our agencies, and of course respecting our communities and maximizing benefit to our local communities and the environment and minimizing impacts. That is the objective of the program. So we would like to ask you to stay involved with us. You have online and in your project handouts information for you to write us, to call us, to check our website to receive ongoing information. I would like to remind our audience here and online that all of the meeting information is available on the authority website. We encourage you to keep that and check it as we move forward with our planning. And invite you to continue to stay involved with the program. If you're here today or email us, you will automatically receive our noticing going forward, and appreciate very much the time and the interest that you have paid on any level with this program going forward. So thank you again for your time tonight and for participating online, and please stay with us as we move forward with this very important program. Thank you.